seems too much.
Suicide, then forgiveness. Shattering stigma, igniting hope. I'm Elaine Lindsay, and my mission is to end the silence, the stigma, the shame surrounding suicide, ideation, and mental health. We talk about the hard stuff because asking for help should be as easy as ordering a coffee. Here, we share real stories from those who've lost someone, survived an attempt, live with ideation, or battle mental health challenges. Why? Because sharing your burden can lighten the load. Please note, Suicide Then Forgiveness, the podcast, is for education only. Some of the subject matter could be triggering for those who are either grieving or having mental health problems. If you're in North America, you can text 988 for immediate support. And if you're elsewhere, please reach out to your local suicide hotline or mental health service. You matter. My aim is to normalize the conversation so you feel safe enough to speak up and ask for help. So now, let's start the show. Hello there. It's great to be back, and today I am pleased to introduce you to our guest, Cara Marino. I recently met, so I don't know her very well. We're going to let Cara give us some information on her background. I know it's interesting. And then we'll get into her story as we usually do. So thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you being here, Cara.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all you're doing for us who have experienced these struggles. This is a very important topic because so many of us are still struggling and or are still lost. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you, and it's part of being part of the audience. I think I make a good host because I've been there, and there are days I'm still there, so I'm right there with you. So why don't you give us a little background on what it is that you do?
Well, hello, everyone. Again, my name is Cara Marino. Despite how I look and sound, I am a 30-year-old woman on a mission. I'm an occupational therapist of 7 years and a certified holistic herbalist going on 3-4 years. I've lost track. And my whole goal in life is, because of the struggles I have had with my physical and mental health, I am here to pave a way to integrate education and therapeutic perspective to help individuals with different diagnoses, diseases, injuries, including mental health disabilities and struggles, and then creating holistic health and wellness options that are feasible, affordable, so that way we better integrate what it means to have quality of life again, to essentially live in the moment and to heal at the preventative measure and not getting lost in this system as a number anymore.
That is so critically important. And let's face it, we are in times of tumult and chaos, and it is really hard for people. So hats off to you for doing what you can. And I love the way you said you're on a mission, because I think that's critically important. What I want to do before you go ahead and start, your occupation, does the occupation and the mission come from your life or someone else's?
So it's more of a combination of the two. I fell into occupational therapy because I was born into this world with health issues. I had open heart surgery when I was 4. So little did me know at the time, I had primarily an occupational therapist showing and educating me as a 4-year-old how to walk to the bathroom, how to toilet myself again, how to get dressed again, how to get out of bed. Um, and then later on in my life, I ended up having a systemic visual deficit where I presented like a stroke. The neurons in my brain were not firing in the right side of my eye. So if you told me to draw a house, I would say it's done. And really, actually, only half of the house was drawn. So I had an occupational therapist after I had patching for, I think it was about 2 years to force my bad eye to work to read and write again. I will always have an auditory processing deficit, but compared to what it would have been, she is the facilitator of how I continued getting through my education and learning as a child. And then my grandparents, when I was getting older, seeing what it was like to be a caregiver from my mom's side of things. And occupational therapists were coming in to help my grandparents, who both had strokes, to be able to stand and walk, to self feed. It's always been in the background and yet the forefront at the same time. And it wasn't until my mom in high school showed an article about the need for occupational therapists. And I shadowed, and really, that's been the story since. I never looked back once I started my program.
Oh, that is wonderful. And I think it's always so much. I think people give so much more when it comes from family, when you learn what it is you love to do through helping those that are closest to you. And I think it gives a little extra something to what you do.
Yes, I agree. That firsthand experience, and in some ways traumatic experiences,
Yeah,
puts in perspective, and I feel that it gives me a level of empathy that is lost in some other individuals. Not in any type of derogatory term, but again, having more of that relationship and awareness of what it was like.
absolutely. And I think that's really important because we do develop more empathy and more caring when we are caring for those around us. When it's, children who grow up with chronically ill parents or grandparents tend to be much more empathetic on a more global scale than the average child. Now, in your case, add to that your own struggles, and my God, that's a lot. Okay, at 4 years old, that's a whole lot to go through. I think that just increases it. And for a very long time, I said that doctors and nurses should have to go through 48 hours of a hospital stay to understand exactly what it feels like to be a patient. And you did that long before it was a necessity for what you do. But yeah, thank you. Hats off to you for that. So let's get into your story and why we have you here on the show today.
Well, this is actually a first for me to really be discussing so openly about my experience with my mental health. I touch on it very lightly, but I think it's finally time to show and tell people that when you surround yourself with a good group of people, no matter how long it takes, you'll finally start feeling like yourself again, finding a reason to live again, and overall finding forms of happiness that you so long have forgotten about. Because it's really weird. It wasn't until I turned 30, which was this past year, that my brain finally felt silent because of what I've always been battling inside my mind. And really, it really starts in middle school because, middle schoolers are just the worst. We're trying to figure out who we are as people, but in reality, we're just rambunctious and crazy and mean. Um, because of my health issues, I'm a very petite person, which was going to be expected. Being petite actually is what saved my life, actually, from what they said. But I suffered from a lot of bullying to the extent of when it came to transitioning to high school, it became a lot of physical and sexual abuse towards me. And at the time, because I didn't have that sense of voice and resilience that I do now, I would just let it happen repeatedly. I would not talk about it. Friends would see and try to say things to me, but it would never get through that barrier of pain and control that those individuals had over me. And I think that's something important for people to realize is not to have shame because you didn't talk then, because you're still trying to process at such a young age of what's happening. It's like you think in high school you're grown up, but you're not by any means, even from trauma that might make you think at a more adult level. And that's unfortunately where I continued caving into things of I was thinking I was more adult on certain subjects with people regarding like intimacy, but in reality I knew absolutely nothing because all I knew was negative. And that negativity unfortunately spurred into having my virginity lost in a manner that I did not give consent to. And this was just before I entered college. I went to college purposely away from all of my trauma in hopes to get away from that scenario. But unfortunately, I did not think ahead of things because I was so immersed in dealing with the trauma, accepting the trauma, almost like a Stockholm syndrome and self-preservation and self-sacrifice, because I didn't want another girl knowing what it was like to be with someone who was doing such horrible things. And and I don't think this is talked about for a lot of individuals who have been assaulted in such a manner, is called having hypersexuality. So even though you want nothing to do with it, in order to keep them in your hands and monitor their behavior, you become very hyperactive in the activity that they want. And I thought going to college would help with the escape finally. But the problem was I never addressed the problem. I never talked about the problem. My parents knew something was wrong because I was angry and crying and isolating myself all the time. But because I never said anything, I got the stigma of, oh, she's a female, it's her hormones, which did not help my mental health even further, because when I would scream and cry at times, I was hoping my parents would know that something else was wrong. But now that I'm older, I realize that was an unfair expectation because I was not voicing what was actually wrong.
And I was just going to add there, because very often we don't realize this, but it's like we inadvertently join a club. Anyone who's ever been molested or sexually assaulted joins a club not by choice. But the changes, the hypersexuality, the anger, the crying, all of that is part of it. In the midst of one's teens, okay, all teens are this stupid hormone soup that makes no sense. And I'm not excusing anything that is done. I'm saying it's nothing comes from a place of normalcy. There just isn't any. But once you're in that club, it's like you have a stamp on your forehead and you put the signal out, and others who, like yourself, have been victimized, they almost know. You know when someone lives in your club. You know that. But on the other side of it, unfortunately, you could go away to college, but you're taking you, that victimized piece, with you, and it becomes a beacon for those predators. And
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And that is actually exactly what continued my first year as a freshman. Um, luckily not to the extent, because I made a good core group in the beginning, so I did have protective people that anytime we did events, went to events, we all stuck together and never separated. And if someone tried to do anything towards me, they would interfere. And they also gave me the strength to start pushing back, but I still felt like this empty shell of myself, because again, no one knew actually what had happened, and what I left behind, because I just kept stewing in my own self-pity and also pride of, I'll figure this out. I don't need anybody. I'll figure it out. I'll go to college. It'll just go away. It'll come with time. And that's the problem. We need to recognize when a trauma happens, it's not going to go away unless you start expressing and addressing it in a manner with someone that you feel safe with. Like, it obviously, as a high schooler, telling your parents is the scariest freaking thing.
Yeah.
And I tried to, again, because unfortunately that individual still had ways into my life to mess with my head, that I was kicked off campus my freshman and sophomore year of college, sorry, because of suicidal ideations. And I was starting to finally express pain. But the problem was, instead of trying to talk to me, they removed me from the situation and tried to put me in inpatient, which then created this stigma that I was crazy, with like the college thinking I'm crazy, my parents thinking I want attention, and the poor social worker going, I don't know what to do with you, because I learned how to mask it. So I act like everybody else was wrong and I'm not in pain. And it just fueled that toxic cycle of nothing ever really being properly addressed because of the manner that it was handled. What compared to if I had originally said something and said, "Hey, this happened to me." But it at the time, my brain is just going, that's it. Like, this is gonna be the cycle of my life. I'm not gonna make it through college, because I almost, if not for one of my awesome professors who saw my resilience during one of my classes, of just how I would take my pain and really implement it in my courses, especially my theology and philosophy, because it's such an outwardly topic that I almost ruined my entire career when I got kicked off the second time. They were not willing to let me back. I was going to be kicked out of the occupational therapy program. And if not for him seeing what I was capable of, I would not be where I am today without that professor. But
No.
it still was like following this tide of when and where do I find the help? And that was still the struggle. It's still, It's the Sicilian in me, the pride. Excuse me, but it just I kept crumbling, and then the nail on the head for me was I lost my boyfriend to cancer in between then of all that mess through college.
Oh my God.
And we were separated, as in like long distance, because I came from a generation where you made a lot of friends online. And I know that sounds creepy and I would not recommend it today. But that generation, we had safety implemented. So I knew this person was real. There was Skype, all those things. And I kept him a secret for a very long time. So not only am I withering in pain, I can't talk about that pain because no one's going to believe me that he existed except for our other online friends. So I was just in this tornado once again of I'm pathetic. I don't mean anything. The person that made me feel anything safe to talk about my abuse with and heal from it is now gone. I'm not intelligent enough to get through college. I was still getting bullied by people in my own class because because of my auditory processing deficit, I didn't pick up on material all the time very fast. So I got ostracized during group projects. So for me, college for the first 3 years felt a lot like high school. And I was just getting to the point where I did not want to be here anymore. Like I was starting to plan. I was starting to think of any way I could escape this life as simplistically and not as animalistic as possible to make it seem almost like an accident. And that's so terrifying to think about now that in college, I was researching ways of how to end my life on such a manner to make it seem like an accident. Like, what do you mean? Like, that's an absolutely insane concept. But when you're in that pit, that black cloud that doesn't feel like it's going to be going anywhere south quick, it just, you can't think about anything else. It literally is all consuming of you put that mask on to get through the day, but every waking moment through those conversations, the back of your mind is just saying, just end it. It's not worth it. No one cares about you. And I didn't know what was going to happen, but weirdly enough, I joined theater. Theater, my end of my junior year or beginning of junior year, because my roommate said we needed dancers and I used to dance. And I don't know what happened. I think it was because theater, again, it was almost another form of masking. But that was like the first time I felt joy during college because I got to just be a character and be this over elated concept. And I was getting positive feedback. It was like the first time I was getting good feedback of you play this role well, your dancing is great. Also, I was helping teach people how to do their performances. So I was making myself feel this need. But once theater was done, I started to collapse again because it was over. What was next? What was I gonna do? And then there again, just resilience. I got out of a toxic living situation to live with my aunt. And that's really where I went. I am still having these thoughts and I need to freaking do something because if I don't, I am not going to know what 5 years of busting my butt off, improving myself behind the scenes while struggling through this depression and suicidal ideations. It like where is this going to take me if I don't talk now? I can never go back. It's going to just get harder and harder. And I'm like, I don't think I can hit rock bottom any further than I have. And my aunt was very open with me, could tell that I wasn't all there in the mix of things, which for me was very wild because of having it just being pushed down as I'm just being hormonal because I'm a girl. But she helped me sign up for BetterHelp. And I had to lie through a couple questions because I could not trust going to see a regular psychologist because of what I'd gone through in college and the stigma that even those psychologists put on me. But I had the loveliest individual to get me finally out of where I was so bad. She did a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy and first informed me of it, but what was really great is she allowed me to express my spirituality as well. So she implemented parts of my spirituality into our sessions. And I liked how it wasn't just talk therapy. She gave me actual assignments to do. So it let me actually immerse myself. And she is the reason I was able to thrive in my career. So I specialize in skilled nursing, so older adults in my occupational therapy field. And because of changing the constant negative self-talk into finding silver linings, it wasn't just positive self-talk. She was encouraging me to just find those silver linings first so I wouldn't get overwhelmed. And my older adults were my silver linings. Every time I worked with them, seeing them progress, seeing our interactions and the rapport that I can create with these individuals because I remind them of a granddaughter or maybe a granddaughter they never had. My residents built up my confidence. They became my community for my mental health because in that duality of approach, they are struggling through the same things I am, but at a different level and a different perspective because of why they're working with me. And it made me realize that if we don't have each other, then who do we have? If we continue to stay isolated, that negative self-talk is never going to stop. The cycle will always continue. You have to hear people out, you have to learn from people, and you have to let people in order for there to be a form of healing. And that healing won't always go away. There's going to be something that triggers you, but you're gonna find ways to be able to pull yourself out of them better. And my residents were always the key to that. Even now, they just, oh, I love them so much. I cry all the time when I think about certain individuals who have left this life that I got to see through. But in hindsight, if you are a healthcare worker, you know the traumas of what COVID caused. So I graduated when I was 2017. So I was 21. And so between 21 to 25, I had good years ahead of me. I was getting my career under my belt. I moved out on my own. I was on cloud nine, and then COVID hit. And originally it wasn't that bad until it never stopped. And that is where for the first time I hit rock bottom so fast I couldn't sleep and I was hyperventilating all the time. And that was not due to always wearing the PPE. I would literally be in my car after my days and I would just be having a full-blown panic attack because I couldn't do my job. People were suffocating on their own room air left and right. I couldn't promote, I couldn't adapt, I couldn't make them smile. And when I saw one of my patients who was her honorary granddaughter, because she never got to have one. And this was, again, during the time where COVID was so bad that families were not even allowed to be there anymore. And she was also on the side where I no longer had access to because it was in lockdown. So therapists were not allowed at a certain section of the building for exposure reduction. And I watched her die from the window.
Oh, honey.
And I still struggle to talk about that. And that's where I went home, flat out cried in the bathroom, and said, I can't do this anymore. And I wasn't just talking about my job. I was so close to being like, screw being an OT. But my mental health got so bad so quick in that moment that I was texting my friend, and thank God I had that resilience to autonomically text. And I mentioned, I go, I'm going to kill myself tonight. I can't fucking do this anymore. I was getting very vulgar in my language. I was just falling apart of like, I want to cut myself. I want to bleed. I need to feel anything that is painful in order to go numb. And she didn't even care about the regulations of the whole COVID thing. She goes, shut up. I want you to get in your car now. You're going to meet me here and we're going to have time together. And I am so grateful for her because that is where my entire life and my perspective on life got flipped upside down, because that is where my herbalist journey came into play.
Wow.
I met the shopkeeper. We went to a spiritual shop. She was just sitting me down around all these crystals and just holding me and getting me recentered. And the shopkeeper was also helping. And in the mix, she was doing a little bit of practice Reiki on me because that's what she was going back for. But she had mentioned Rosemary Gladstar and her herbalism course online. And it was like something hit the back of my head and said, keep asking questions. And I literally signed up that night. I read the course review. I signed up. I never looked back. And holistic health and wellness is the reason I am still walking this earth today. Not just because I'm performing holistic health on myself, but I was mentioning this to someone else of I use dead plants for a reason, and it's because of revitalizing their life force so that way we can still live. And I feel like that's my mission, is to take what is dead and bad and negative and lost and now turning it into light and life. And I genuinely, like, this whole journey and my whole business journey is my fight to keep living because I want to help people. My first herbal medicine I ever made, which could have been anything, was a topical herbal roller for grounding the mind, promoting self-love, reducing nervous agitation and anxiety. And I was like, holy crap, there is obviously a reason for this. And it's because of my body telling me I need to be here for a reason. I have a purpose that I never knew I had up until now, because I had to go through all of that shit before. And though it's way later in life than I wanted it to, I had to go through so much pain in order to be at an elevated level now to help others. And it's not that I don't ever stop thinking about certain things. Like when I think February is always a very hard time for me because that's when my boyfriend passed away. That sneaks up on me, but I always think about the fact that he's still walking this life with me and he would be so proud of where I am today. Um, and all of those things. It's very interesting because even my mom said, she goes, I don't even know who you are now because I was so worried about you before. Um, and that's a really validating response after she didn't know for so long what was happening until way later in my life working with my therapist to be able to finally sit down and tell her everything.
Well, I, for one, am absolutely thrilled that you're still with us. A couple of things I want to unpack for the audience there is, first of all, that you have a very deep well of resilience, which I think is wonderful because you did have things to do and to do for others. And very often, the people that do the most for others in the most compassionate way do it from what they've lived. And I think that when you said you went and got involved in theater, that was the first little seed of hope that was given to you, that you just hung on to. And everything that you've done after that, especially getting into the herbs, is absolutely those seeds that bloom, that make that hope grow, that give you the ability to withstand what you've got through. And I think that's incredible because it's a very special person that can take all of that and turn it into such positivity and such a gift for the people that you work with. And I just want to say I totally feel for you because losing the people that you've worked with and during COVID, it being so difficult for any of us to see those people, to, you know, people were having funerals and they couldn't have anybody there. They were just, you know, like the wife or the husband, or that's all you could have. And it's so difficult when we don't get to go through the rituals that we have for life and death. It's really hard for us to process that and go on.
Yes. I think what's also important is when you're in such a dark place, we forget the importance of spirituality. And for crying out loud, if worshiping a pickle makes you happy, I have no judgment. But it's you need something else to hold on for you in the process of you figuring it out. And and again, spirituality doesn't equate to religion. It's
No,
just walking the path of vibration and energy. And as long as you keep getting up every day, and you might not accomplish everything you want during that day, but the fact that you got up and you took a step and you got even one medial task done, or maybe you remembered to feed yourself, like that is always a win. Those small things are always a win because there were so many times I would stop eating because when you're in just such a bad depressive state, nothing is enjoyable. Not even your favorite foods or drinks, like nothing is enjoyable. But I don't know
and
where this resilience came in, but I'm very grateful for it.
yeah, yeah, no, I think it is absolutely wonderful. And you know, to another point I wanted to sort of hit on is your mom, your dad, very often when we are in that dark place, it's really hard because for so many generations, people did not talk about anything to do with suicide or ideation or mental health, any of it. And for many, many years, okay, people are still out there thinking, oh, I don't want to say the suicide word. What if I drive someone to suicide? When in fact, the opposite is absolutely the truth. If you think someone is struggling, then say something, because the first thing that happens is that person knows that they're being seen. Give them the benefit of your attention, and even, give somebody 10 minutes. They look, just no judgment, no nothing. I'll listen. But I see you struggling. Just tell me, how do you feel? And it's not about fixing people. It's not about coming up with the exact solution, or any solution for that matter. It can be just listening and just letting that person be seen and heard.
It
I think
just
that,
takes, yeah, it just takes one person, because
yeah,
if not for my best friend, I would not be here, because all she did was say, "We're gonna go here." And that gave me a task to do. And she didn't ask further. She didn't ask for for more questions. She never said, "Wow, you were really being dramatic." It's like just offering, "Hey, what's going on?" Or, "Hey, let's do something to allow the person a safe space to naturally open up." It is vital, because if you overstimulate the person, they're going to just wall themselves off again.
yeah. And
Because that's what our brains are trained to do when you have suicidal ideation. It's keeping these mental walls up
yeah.
and knowing when to do it exactly at the right time, when there's a situation that you should be like, "Oh, hey, this person actually is caring. I should let these walls come down."
And it's because we don't have conversations about suicide day to day that everybody tiptoes on eggs rather than say something. We have to get past that. We have to be able to talk about all the difficult subjects in exactly the same way we talk about having a party, or seeing a new baby, or getting a puppy or a cat or whatever. All of those things need to be part of our day-to-day conversations, so that we're allowing people to be fully themselves. The good, the bad, the indifferent. If we try to erase or shut out those parts of people, it's like not seeing them at all. And that's what loses hope. And
Yes,
when you don't
and
have hope,
again, yeah, I absolutely agree. And the term suicide, like when someone hears the word suicide, it stops you in your tracks. And I have to voice my concern about the social media generation of using the term unalive, and it doesn't have the same
no.
deafening tone. It's taking away from what people are struggling from, because of the censorship or the now jokes around
Yeah.
feeling these feelings. And it's really not like that outside a social media platform. Please know, for those listening, it's not like that. When you use the word suicide, people are going to stop and stare, and you're either going to find out they want to help you, or you need to find somewhere else to go.
Absolutely. And to that point, I've said this many, many times. I'm going to say it one more time because it's important. I heard, we were watching TV the other night, and in the program, I don't know if it was a police procedural or something, but they still said committed suicide. We do not use that term because in North America, for the most part, attempted suicide is no longer a crime. That was only true as of 1966 in America and 1972 in Canada, except for Virginia, which still has a law on the books. There are many countries around the world that still consider it a crime, and people in those countries are working on changing that. But we have to call it out because this is why we have so much cover up, so much angst, so much shame, so much stigma, because people are still so bottled up about this. We have to open up. We have to use the right terminology. We have to understand. You don't want to trigger people. This is a very deep and important subject, and it's dangerous. But we have to use the terminology because these conversations are more important than ever. And when I tell you that in the past month, I know of 3 young kids in America, 8, 11, and 12, that took their own lives because of bullying. We have to talk about this because that cannot happen. This has to stop. And I know, like lately at the end of every show, I get on my soapbox because I just cannot have the world be silent on this. We have to start valuing human beings, every single human being. That's never mind your labels, never mind your whatever, okay? We are first and foremost humans, and every single one of us matters.
100%. Like we only have one life to live that we know of.
Yeah, yes.
People are always, a lot of times I say, and I've learned now that when you are a bright light, all the darkness will do everything it can to snuff you out. Do not let it snuff you out because there are people that do care. You just, it's tiresome. It is an exhausting journey, but there will be someone, just one,
Yeah.
who will show you that they want you to be on this earth because you hold value. And then when you can find validation within yourself and nobody else, that is when true change happens. Because I can tell you now, if someone bullies me, I've done boxing, I have light taekwondo training and light MMA training now because my senseis are also a reason I have this boost of confidence. I will put you on your ass now. But that came again from just trudging through these waters. The minute you give up and you go to that other side, you can't take it back and there's no do-overs.
No.
And it's not worth it. It's not, because there's so much to life that is good. We just need to blow your black cloud somewhere else.
Yeah, because it's a very permanent solution to what amounts to a temporary problem. I cannot thank you enough for joining me here today, Cara. You are wise beyond your years, and you have not only found the silver lining, but you have taken and wrung all the good out of the trauma you have gone through. And I can tell you there are tons of people who are thankful for that. I love what you do. I love how you talk about it. And I know the audience saw when you started talking about occupational therapy and your seniors, you lit up like a candle. And that joy nobody can pretend that's real. So I thank you so much. I hope somewhere down the road we come back and have another discussion about your journey and where you're at.
I would love that. Thank you again for everything that you do for our community. And thank you for allowing me for the first time to actually feel comfortable talking about my trauma and my story that I've never really gotten to be able to do. You are a very kind and warming soul. So thank you for having this space for us.
Cara, that you've just given me such an incredible gift. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
To our audience, this has been Cara Marino. All her information will be down below, and all the show notes, etc., will be there. How you can contact her, that'll all be there as well. As usual, I just am very thankful that you are here with us today. I want to say to our audience and to you too, Cara, make the very most of your today every day. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for being here for another inspiring episode of Suicide Zen Forgiveness. We appreciate you tuning in. Please subscribe and download on your favorite service and check out SZF's YouTube channel or Facebook community. If you have the chance to leave a 5-star rating or review, it'd be greatly appreciated. Please refer this to a friend you know who may benefit from the hope and inspiration from our guests. Suicide Zen Forgiveness was brought to you by the following sponsors. Truel Social Media, the digital integration specialists. Let them get you rockin' page 1 in the search results. Canada's keynote humorist Judy Croon, motivational speaker, comedian, author, and stand-up coach at Second City. Judy has been involved for over a decade in the City Street Outreach Program in Toronto.
The ultimate podcasting pack. This is great for you if you're just starting your podcast or if you've been running it for a while. It's filled with tools, templates, and trainings for starting, growing, and monetizing your podcast. Get access to time-saving systems and strategies for accelerating your process at each step. Find new connections and collaborations in the uplifting podcasting community. I look forward to seeing you there.
Do you have a story to share? Do you know someone you think would be a great guest? Please go to szf42.com. And for our American listeners, that's szf42.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again.